Hey everybody, welcome to Night Watchman News. Tonight we're going to be talking about Bilderberg. We're going to talk a little bit about Syria. We're going to talk about some of the technological advances that are going on. And yeah, we're going to have to still talk about cannibals because that's still in the news. So let's dive right in. So if you don't know, Bilderberg is this big secretive confab that has all of these elites meeting all in one place, basically talking about how they're going to run our lives. What do they talk about? They talk about this year it's going to be mostly focused on controlling the internet, implementing the green agenda, which means carbon taxes worldwide. I don't know if you guys have heard, but in Australia, they've instituted a carbon tax, and anybody who disagrees with the tax has to pay $1 million Australian dollars for disagreeing with something. So that's where they're at there. So we have to prevent something like that from happening in the United States or anywhere else. So Bilderberg is meeting in Chantilly, Virginia at the Westfields Marriott. InfoWars has posted a partial list of the individuals who are going to this meeting. And I mean, let me give you an idea of who's going to be there. Keith Alexander, he's from the U.S. Cyber Command with the National Security Agency, so he's an NSA operative, and he's going to be meeting with Peter Thiel, who is one of the founding members and one of the major contributors to Facebook, and he's the founder of PayPal. So these are some of the most popular websites on the internet, and they're going to meet with the NSA. So Facebook, the head of Facebook, is going to be meeting with one of the heads of the National Security Agency. What do you think they're going to talk about? I don't know, pretty interesting. But hey, it doesn't exist. You know, that's what we've been told, is that Bilderberg doesn't exist, and we're all a bunch of conspiracy theorists for imagining that these guys are going to be meeting in one place. So some of the other members that are there, Henry Kissinger is there. He'll always be there, well, for the next couple of years until he dies. And the evil dinosaur David Rockefeller, he's always there. And these guys want this meeting to be secret because they talk about how they're going to control our lives, and it really upsets them that people like you and I are taking notice of the Bilderberg meeting, and we want to find out what these guys are talking about. I don't think it's wrong for everybody to meet all in one place and discuss policy, but they owe it to us to talk about it. You know, they can't just keep this stuff secret if they're talking about our lives and implementing policy. The way that they characterize the meeting is that it's informal and that they just kind of get together and chat, but I don't buy it, because all of these really important people are meeting, and this is only once a year. So you know they're talking about some really serious stuff. I mean, even if this was an informal meeting, you know they're getting together and making some backroom deals. So Bilderberg is definitely a big deal. Pay attention to it. It'll be going on till the end of the weekend. And we here at Night Watchman News will be covering it. Head to Infowars.com. They've got a Bilderberg 2012 page that'll bring you up to speed if you don't know much about it, and they'll let you know. In other Bilderberg news, an individual who works for MSNBC, his name's Lawrence O'Donnell. He was interviewed by Luke Rudkowski from We Are Change. We Are Change is a great website full of real journalism. People sticking cameras and microphones in all of the elite journalists' faces and asking the tough questions. And that's what journalism is, folks. It's asking the tough questions and making people uncomfortable. It may even be making yourself unpopular, but that's what you have to do. And, you know, we're not going to watch a lot of the video here, but of course you can check it out for yourself. There's that teleprompter reader, Lawrence O'Donnell. And what does he have to say about Bilderberg? Well, I'm way too lazy to research Bilderberg. So yeah, the people that are in the mainstream media, the journalists that you respect and you watch on cable television every night, there's that criminal right there. Look at that guy. Look at this stupid trendy jacket that he's wearing, like he's like a liberal or something like that. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, these people live in a bubble and they don't know how to actually research anything. Lawrence O'Donnell openly says that he's too lazy to research anything, and he's telling this to another journalist, Luke Rudkowski, because he thinks that that narrative isn't important. So just because he doesn't know about it doesn't mean, just because you don't know about it, Lawrence O'Donnell, doesn't mean that Bilderberg doesn't exist, and it does. Even if you don't know about something, you're supposed to research it when somebody brings it up and not attack them for it. But of course he does know something about it. He's just been given his marching orders not to talk about it. And that's why he gets in Luke Rudkowski's face. This is a great video. You guys got to check it out. Also at Bilderberg, another thing you can get educated on is the illegality of the Bilderberg meetings. There's Henry Kissinger right there. Look at that toad. He's like 107 years old. I mean, when is this guy going to die? We just can't wait. I mean, this guy's a total criminal. Secretly bombed Cambodia during Vietnam. I mean, these clowns have got to go. See, this joker, I mean, he's been kind of like the main, the prize pig over at Bilderberg, I guess, for the past, I don't know, 150, 200 years. Yeah, just look how old and disgusting that guy is. Anyway, what this article talks about is something called the Logan Act. This is a great article by Kurt Nimmo, posted on May the 31st. Now, the Logan Act, this law is here in the United States and in Great Britain and probably in a lot of other countries. Basically, it says that people that are working for the government can't meet in secret with other foreign officials. They have to talk about what the substance of their meetings were. They have to discuss what the conclusions they reached at these meetings were. They have to share that information with their leadership and with the American people. And none of these guys are doing that. They're violating the Logan Act, which is a law that's been on the books since 1799 during the John Adams administration. Hillary Clinton actually got busted for going to Bilderberg back in 2010, and she had to pay a $300,000 fine. But hey, no big deal. I'll be back. She'll go back to Bilderberg any day, you know, if they invite her. These are her bosses we're talking about. She has to follow what they say. And I found a really interesting article here on Lew Rockwell. It's called Our Anti-Imperialist Heritage, and this is by Murray Rothbard. If you guys really want to get into libertarian philosophy and understand some of the theoretical underpinnings of liberty, Murray Rothbard is the place to go. And this is just an interview with him towards the end of his life. He died in, I think, 1995. But he talks about U.S. foreign policy. And the reason why I bring this up today is because the stuff that he talks about reveals what the Bilderberg agenda is all about. Murray Rothbard had his finger on the pulse of American foreign policy, and he hated warfare, and he hated unjust wars, and that's what this is all about. So he talks a little bit about why isolationism is the only sustainable foreign policy that the United States can have. That's great. He kind of gives it to Kennedy. Yeah, he doesn't like Kennedy off the hook, or Lincoln. He calls Woodrow Wilson the biggest SOB in American history right there, in the sense of evil impact. So you might be thinking, Woodrow Wilson, I don't know much about him. He's just a guy that I heard about in high school. But Murray Rothbard calls him the biggest SOB in American history. So that's interesting. Okay, so he talks about kind of like the corporate government partnership that happened around World War I, and I'll just read you a little bit of it here. Woodrow Wilson cements the so-called reforms which totally subject the banking system to federal power and with the Federal Trade Commission, which did for business what the Interstate Commerce Commission did for the railroads. In other words, he imposed a system of monopoly capitalism, or corporate state monopoly, which we now call the partnership of government and of big business and industry, which means essentially a corporate state, or as we call it, economic fascism. It culminated in World War I economic planning, for the war consisted of a totally collectivized economy headed by the sainted and revered Bernard Mans Barak, head of the War Industries Board. The economy had a central board, and each industry was governed by a committee from the industry. Say the iron and steel industry was governed by the Iron and Steel Board. The heads of the board were deliberately selected from the biggest firms in that particular industry, so they could negotiate with committees of industry set up by the government. And the government would encourage trade associations in the industries to set up committees and negotiate with these boards. So what you have is the so-called commodity sections, the government boards selected from the biggest businessmen, and we'll just skip ahead a little bit here. They didn't like the idea of Marxian socialism because it was messy, emphasized class struggle, and led to a revolution perhaps. What they saw here was a new order, and this was a vision held by Barak and Herbert Hoover and all sorts of progressive intellectuals from the universities and so forth. They saw a beautiful new order with big government controlling the economy, regulating it, subsidizing it, largely staffed by big businessmen in collaboration with unions, which were deliberately encouraged as disciplinary agents for the labor force, and which were practically created by the war labor system. All of this, of course, was staffed and apologized for by the progressive intellectuals who acquired prestige, power, and a great sense of accomplishment, pushing people around in their government bureaus. Boom! There you go. That is the whole mission of Bilderberg right there, is to get corporate monopolies working together with the government to produce total fascism, to produce total slavery. This unholy partnership of big government, big business, big unions, and intellectuals was developed back in World War I. Murray Rothbard, man. He says it all. Okay, and some other troubling stuff in tech and science news. Human barcode could make society more organized but invades privacy and civil liberties. Yeah, no kidding. Here's a great picture right there. Wouldn't you like that to be you? That's you after the New World Order. They're going to shave your head and slap a barcode on you to keep track of you. So, a science fiction author, this idiot named Elizabeth Moon, last week rekindled the debate on whether it's a good idea to barcode infants at birth in an interview on a BBC radio program. BBC, big propaganda arm, so of course they're into this. And she says, I would insist on every individual having a unique ID permanently attached, a barcode, if you will, an implanted chip to provide an easy, fast, inexpensive way to identify individuals. And she said this on a forum, a weekly show that features a global thinking discussing a radical, inspiring, or controversial idea for 60 seconds. So this is basically a globalist TV show where they talk about global government. And I mean, this stuff totally grosses me out. I mean, you're not going to stick a chip into my kid to track her around. I'm not going to let that happen. And I don't want a chip stuck into me either. I mean, I'm not some science experiment. We're not lab rats in a maze. Let's stand up for ourselves here, people. Okay, we have a lot of news to cover. We're going to take a little break. Go ahead and jump over to part 2 of this video cast, and I'll tell you more of what's going on. Okay, check out part 2.